Welcome everybody. So, as you see, I am a professor of economics at the Department of Economics and Management in Padova, in Italy, and I'm also the co-chair of the Electricity Security Supply Task Force of ACER CR. Now, these last acronyms might not be too clear to you now, but I am sure that by the end of this presentation, all of you will be able to understand what does it stand for. Okay? So let's start. The topic of today's presentation is the third energy package. And today's presentation will run as it is shown in the slide. We will first discuss of what is it we are talking about when we talk about the third energy package. We will see how was the situation of electricity and gas markets before the third energy package, and why there was a need to provide a comprehensive regulatory framework provided by the third energy package. We will discuss the fundamental pillars of the third energy package. We will also see what are the so-called target models for both electricity and gas and the relationship between them and the third energy package. And finally, we will open a window towards the future beyond the third energy package. I also should remind you that this presentation is the first of a set of other three presentations, so there are other two, which will focus more in depth into some of the topics that we cover today as an overall comprehensive range. Okay, so what is the third energy package? It stands in short for a set of regulations, so a set of directives and regulations that have been issued by the European Commission and the Parliament, and whose aim is to foster the completion of the internal energy market. In particular, there are five fundamental pieces of legislation that together are described as the third energy package, and they are the Directive 72 of 2009 and the Directive 73 of 2009, which concern the common rules for the internal energy market in electricity and in gas, respectively. And there are three regulations. Regulation 713 of 2009, which established the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators, so-called ACER. Regulation 714 and 715, which set the conditions for network access for cross-border exchange in electricity and in gas, respectively. Okay? So, to all together, these five pieces of regulation determine are what is called the third energy package, but not only these. From these primary legislative sources, a lot of secondary legislation has been produced by the several bodies empowered with the power of regulating the electricity and gas sector. And not only legislation, but also there have been a lot of documents, opinions, acts. So yeah, effectively, there is a large sense of third energy package, which includes not just these five directives, but all the regulation and acts that have been produced following, thanks to these five pieces of legislation. Those directives and regulations have been approved in 2009. They have entered in force in 2011, and the process of delivering secondary legislation and further regulation within the third energy package is still ongoing. Okay, so effectively we are talking about something that has started few years ago and whose process is still continuing, whose effect had started some years ago, but are still, to some extent, to be fully developed and fully implemented throughout the time in the sector of electricity and gas. Now, when we talk about the third energy package, the sentence is comprised of three terms: third, energy, and package. So let us briefly see what the three of them mean. Energy effectively refers to electricity and gas. So this is a piece of legislation and regulation and acts that affect both the electricity sector and the gas sector. Package, because as we have seen, is a set of acts that have to be seen together. And third, why do third? Well, effectively, if there is a third package, that has probably been something before. So this is the case for the sector we are discussing. In particular, for the electricity and gas sector, there were two fundamental directives. A first electricity and gas directive and the second one. So the first electricity and gas directive is the starting point of the opening of the electricity and gas markets towards competition by applying the principle of non-discrimination within the Union. There is a famous European Court of Justice sentence in 1994 which stated that effectively electricity is to be treated as a good like any other good, as not a service, not a public service, and because of that the communitary principle, the acquis communautaire, has to apply to electricity as well. Having stated that, it became difficult to affirm that this does not apply to gas as well, and this has opened the path towards the first directive. A second electricity and gas directive was released in 2003, and the main aspects were unbundling of the assets and third-party access. So the third-party access is the principle according to which ownership of an asset, whichever it is, physical asset, should not preempt, should not be a sufficient condition to avoid competition or to preempt the possibility that competition takes place, delivering efficiency. The second directive as well established the needs throughout the member states for setting independent national regulatory authorities, NRAs, in the sector of electricity and gas, and also establish some deadlines for a liberalization of the electricity and the gas retail sector, so all liberalization in terms of full access to all kinds of consumers, in particular large consumers, the deadline was 2004, and for small consumers, 2007. So the idea behind the first and the second directive was to set up the proper framework towards to help the markets to converge naturally, so to say, towards a single European market. How this could be done? By fostering competition in the market, having in mind the idea that the competition in national electricity and natural gas markets would naturally lead towards more integrated markets in both electricity and gas. So according to this opinion, to this approach, this theoretical approach, the rationale was that competition is what plays the major role, okay? It was sufficient to deliver a single market, and the aim was not competition per se, but the aim was attaining efficiency. Efficiency of a market can be obtained by a full integration of a market, and this would lead benefit to all consumers, to all participants throughout Europe, by delivering more efficiency, so more value for money, in brief, increasing the standard of services, so we should deliver also quality, and the security of supply in both electricity and gas. This was the theoretical framework behind the first two energy directives. How could this practically be implemented? The idea was that the acquis communautaire, the European Community legislation, and the European Community principle would be enough to attain the target set up by the directive. By opening to competition and liberalizing the sector, this would deliver the efficiency required. And how could the Commission help opening for competition and liberalizing the sector? Recurring to the European competition law whenever it would see that there would be some obstacle towards or some discrimination, or some obstacle towards a single market to start, or some discrimination. Okay. So after the second directive, there was a famous energy sector inquiry in 2005, which made clear that effectively it was perhaps a too optimistic approach. In particular, soon it was realized that there were several aspects that were left out by the Biden approach, which altogether would make it extremely difficult to reach the target of the completion of the internal energy market in electricity and in gas. And in particular, some aspects were left out. As I said, given that the focus was on fostering competition per se, there was no specific requirement on technical regulation prescribed in the first two directives. It was hard to tackle or impossible to tackle cross-border issues, both in electricity and gas. And in gas in particular, it was not possible to affect the contractual clauses that were still in place, even though they were against or seemed to be against the prescription of the directives. There was no clear possibility of splitting the vertically integrated industries in electricity and gas, which were still the majority of the cases throughout Europe. And NRAs were established, they started work, but there was no clear understanding of what were their tasks and what would they do, and there were different types and working of NRAs across Europe. This effectively undermined their role. So as a consequence, the integration process was seriously hampered. The situation was that there were still large vertical integrated industries, both in electricity and gas. The markets were still mostly national markets, because there was a limit or inefficient use of cross-border capacity in electricity and transmission facility in gas. And it was particularly difficult to tackle these cross-border facilities, given that the focus was still on national markets. Okay, so there was no clear empowerment of who were the ones who would have to tackle the cross-border facilities issues. that were hampering the completion of the internal energy market. Okay. So, a third package were released, made of the piece of legislation that we have already seen, and that started producing a lot of acts and legislation afterwards. And what are the crucial elements of this third energy package? In particular, we can identify 5 crucial areas in which there was a thorough specification of competencies and duties in the electricity and gas sector. The first prescription of the third energy package was the need or the obligation to establish effectively a fully independent transmission system operator in electricity and gas by specifying the types of market design that this transmission system operator could take, their role, their responsibilities, and their duties. The third energy package explicitly mentioned and established what were the role and the function and how should the NRAs function, what were the roles of NRAs and how should they function. A new set of bodies were set up at the European level. In particular, it was specified what, where, and what should do the European network of transmission system operators, both in electricity and gas, the so-called ENSO-E and ENSO-G, and a new agency overall was established, the ACER, Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators. It was specified a set of rules, a set of non-discriminatory rules and procedures that were to be applied to foster market integration, and it was specified that these set of non-discriminatory rules and procedures should be delivered through the framework guidelines and network codes. And then finally, the task of market monitoring in electricity and gas was established and attached to some bodies. We will briefly see all these 5 points now. Okay, so the first point, the unbundling of the transmission company and the establishment of independent companies in the transmission and transportation, both in electricity and gas. When I talk about electricity transmission, I mean high voltage transmission, and in gas, I mean gas transportation. So, so there were transmission, let us briefly review what transmission system operators are. They are the companies that operate the networks, okay? The third energy package establishes that TSOs must be independent companies, meaning the third energy package recognizes that there is a potential conflict of interest between the companies that operate the transmission and the possibility and the effective possibility of reaching competition in electricity and gas. Briefly, electricity and gas are network industries, so the way the network is set up, developed, managed, operationally managed, and expanded effectively determines the possibility to exert competition in the sector that needs the network to deliver the product. Okay, and this applies both to electricity and to gas. Now, the third energy package established that there must not be such a potential conflict of interest, and also it establishes how these have to be obtained, how these, how is it possible, what are the design that allows not to, that potentially reduce the conflict of interest. In particular, it established 3 admissible setups for TSOs. TSOs can either be independent system operators, independent transmission system operators, or they must be fully unbundled, okay? ISO, ITO, or unbundled operators. What are they? Well, let's see them. The independent system operator, it's an independent company. In a vertically integrated industry, the upstream sector can still own the physical network, the grid, being it electricity and gas. But however, it has to be the company that effectively manages the grid, so does the operation and management, has to be independent. In particular, the owner of the grid has to appoint an independent system operator. And the investment decision on the grid, so the expansion of electricity or gas, which are the crucial ones to foster competition in the case there is a limited one because of a limited possibility of network access, network or delivery of the service to the network. So these investment decisions have to be agreed, basically. They can be designed by the grid owner, but they have to be agreed with the independent system operator and approved by NRAs. So the crucial idea is that there can still be a vertically integrated industry, but in that case, if a member state adopts the ISO model, the operation, for instance, in case of electricity dispatching, has to be devoted to an independent company. A member state can adopt the ITO system. In the ITO system, there can be a vertically integrated industry with the upstream and the transmission level. But however, the management, so the management at transmission level, must be done by a subsidiary company, and this subsidiary company has to take all the technical and operational decisions independently from the parent company. It must be financially independent from the parent company, and the NRA oversight this. Okay. A third model is the ownership unbundling. The transmission sector, transmission and transportation, under the ownership unbundling is managed by a full independent company. Well, full independent means that no other company active in the integrated industry, being the upstream, downstream, or whatever, can have a majority share, so can determine the management of the transmission company, or exercise any voting right, or appoint any board members. Okay. So the third energy package established that the transmission companies in electricity and in gas must must adopt one of these three possible setups. If there was a fully vertically integrated industry, this should be split, adopting one of these three systems. There are possible exceptions. But only in case this can favor competition, and it has to be proved ex ante and approved by NRA. How is the situation in Europe with regards to the type of separation between transmission TSOs and upstream or downstream industry? Well, at present they coexist, both in electricity and gas, in several member states. In particular, the table describes the situation up to 2 years ago, the last one has been released. We can see that in some countries, and mostly in electricity, the full unbundling has been the model chosen, while other companies mostly adopt the ITO. The ISO model seems to be the one that has been least adopted. This slide is also interesting, because it shows something that those who are less familiar with the electricity and gas sector get quite surprised, that there are several companies and the number of TSOs in electricity and in gas, they are higher than the number of member states. That's because some member states are more than one TSOs, and there is slowly a process of concentration, merger, and acquisition that is taking place among TSOs. Okay, so effectively, the problem of managing the grid in Europe is also a problem of making agreeing and working together. I think there are 47 TSOs in electricity and slightly less in gas. How this process of working together can be accomplished? Well, through some empowering some bodies and establishing some others, okay? The first point is that NRAs should effectively be independent and they should play a role, a fundamental role in the electricity and gas sector. They already existed before the third energy package. However, the directive specifies that the effectiveness of their regulation was frequently hampered because of not effective independence and insufficient power. Okay, so the third energy package aimed also at overtaking this problem. How? By strengthening their independence from government and any other public body, by specifying how the management has to be appointed, has to be renewed, the limiting terms, the financial independence, and so on. It does not only guarantee or tries to make the path towards an effective independence of NRAs, but also the third energy package establishes what are or must be the roles of those independent NRAs. In particular, NRAs have to have the power and the duty to fix tariff, to monitor markets, cooperate with other NRAs and with ACER, and then establish also several reporting obligations looking for a higher clarity and a higher transparency of their activity. Then it also established some new bodies or rechange the shape and the role of some of bodies that were already existing. In particular, the third energy package has focused on two new bodies. One, which is a major of the European Commission, it is called ACER, it's the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators. And then it also establishes, the third energy package also establishes the it set up the European network of transmission system operators, and so one for electricity and one for gas, ENSO-E and ENSO-G. Okay, let's briefly review those two. ACER. Now, before the third energy package, there already existed a European regulatory group for energy and gas, RGAG. It was a voluntary agreement, and it was seen as an advisory group set up by NRA, which did not really effectively have any clear power mandate, at least not one issued by the European Commission. The third energy package has abolished the RGAG and attached some competence that it has to ACER, plus giving to ACER some other competencies. Okay? What is ACER? ACER is the Agency for the Cooperation of Energy Regulators. It's a body that requires some explanation. I will briefly introduce this. There will be a third webinar in 2 weeks, mostly focused on it, on what is ACER, how it works, and what it delivers. So it has effectively its own staff and seat. but it works together with the other NRAs, okay? Effectively, whenever there are some tasks that are attributed to ACER that ACER delivers through its own stuff, plus the stuff of NRAs that works on those topics devoted to cooperation with ACER. So it's not an NRA. One of the things that mostly puzzle those who are not too familiar is that the role between ACER and the other NRAs. ACER is not an NRA. There are still NRAs in national state. It is the agency that foster the cooperation between NRAs on specific tasks. Effectively, it assists national regulatory authorities in assessing their power at community level and coordinate their action whenever it is necessary. It's composed of a director, an administrative board, a board of regulator. Oh, sorry, this slide slightly overlaps. And it has a mandate. In particular, it drafts the framework guidelines and issue opinions on network codes. It also issues opinions on the NSOE and NSOG document plans, which have been established by the third energy package, in particular the so-called 10-year network development plans and the national development plans on the expansion of the transmission both in electricity and gas. It also can issue opinion if when asked, or if it sees the need even on its proper will to the European Parliament and the Commission. Moreover, it has the power to decide on cross-border issues if the national regulators cannot agree on those cross-border issues, or if they ask ACER to intervene. And finally, the monitoring market task that we were referring to some slides before has been attributed to ACER and to NRAs to support ACER, or ACER to support NRAs. In particular, ACER has the task to monitor the functioning of internal electricity and gas markets, including network access for electricity produced from renewables, retail price, and consumer rights. It issues a report on this every year. These are the tasks that were established by the third package to ACER. Some subsequent piece of legislation attribute ACER for their task, in particular all the activity related to the so-called ex-post monitoring that stems from the Regulation on Energy Market Integrity and Transparency, REMIT, and also monitoring implementation of the so-called project of common interest. Okay, let's briefly review what are these framework guidelines and network codes, which are one of the fundamental pillars of the third energy package. They are the technical rules in the electricity and in gas that establish, as we said, they regulate several aspects, in particular how infrastructure can be used, who can use, under which condition, and they refer to cross-border aspects of both electricity and gas, but they're also relevant for the overall market design in electricity and gas, so they also directly affect national markets. How they are approved? Well, there are framework guidelines that establish the general principles. They have been written by ACER effectively from its starting onward. They serve as a framework within which the NSOs have to work, providing the specific pieces of technical regulation that are called network codes. As we said, they are a set of rights and obligations that apply to all parties operating in the electricity with regard to specific topic that the network codes addresses. ACER reviews them and issue opinion, and then finally those network codes are approved by the European Commission and the Member States through the so-called comitology procedure. An important point to establish that effectively marks a major difference of the third energy package compared to the previous one, the previous situation, is that once approved, those network codes directly come into force and apply to member states without any need to be transposed into national law. Effectively, they replace any technical regulation that national member states might have issues on those topics, on the topics that the network codes deals with. Okay, the ENSOs, they are compulsory. So differently from before, the third package establishes that the TSOs have to set up a body, that all of them have to participate to that body, and that body has to be the interface vis-a-vis ACER and the Commission on the technical regulation of these sectors. In particular, they are the one who have to draft the network codes. They are the one who have to draft the expansion of the grids. And they have also to provide data, to provide reviews and outlooks of the current situation and the forthcoming one. Network codes in electricity and gas, very quickly. There are basically three big areas of the network codes in electricity. One which is related to connection to the grid, which applies both to load and generation. One that refers to system operation. System operation is the way the system is operated in order to provide security supply. And one that refers to the market aspects. So they are the market-related network codes that refer to all possible time frame of the market from the long term, 1 year or more than 1 year ahead. Then there is the wholesale, day ahead, intraday, and real-time and balancing. Okay? In gas, there are three main areas of network codes, one which refers to the capacity allocation mechanism and balancing, one that refers to the tariff structure, and one that affects the data exchange among operators and the interoperability. That depends on the data exchange. The status of the network codes at present in electricity and in gas is as described in this slide. In particular, the framework guidelines have all been adopted by the agency for ACER. Some network codes, in particular in electricity, have already been approved and they have already entered into force or they're about to enter into force. One network code has been adopted and enter into force in gas. One is about to enter into force. Some others are still to come. So the work is still ongoing in the technical regulation. There is one fundamental point, quickly, that I want to cover, which is that you might have realized that those network codes are an important step. They refer to specific parts of the technical regulation of electricity and gas, but they tackle specific aspects of the supply chain. So there is a risk that without a comprehensive framework, there is a bit of an idiosyncratic setup coming if there is no coordination among those network codes and if there is no clear aim, no clear targets leading the completion of those network codes. This is effectively what NRAs, together with the Commission, has agreed to explore. The interaction and interdependence of all those areas affected by each specific network code to reach a common vision, to reach a common target. These are the so-called target models. Okay? These target models, and it will be more thoroughly covered, and the relationship between the so-called top-down approach of regulation, which is established by the European Commission, which is the establishment of ACER, and so the writing of technical legislation and regulation and the application of it to the markets. And the bottom-up approach, which comes from specific NRAs and regional initiatives, and so the level of agreement between these two levels, and the specific analysis of the target models and the agreement between target models and network codes will be the topic of the next webinar next week. Few words on what's next, okay, beyond the third package. We have seen that we are still on the way of implementing the third package, and also perhaps on delivering the expected results in terms of competition of internal energy market thanks to the third package. However, while on our way, the European Commission and stakeholders have realized that there are some elements that are missing. In particular, there are some competencies that are still outside the scope of ACER, and they are not tackled into by the third energy package. In particular, two, the security of supply in electricity and the problem of the long-term contract in gas. I will discuss in a second. For the electricity, for the security supply, have the problem of electricity security supply, which is still a national competence, have generated an uncoordinated new set of legislation and market design in national market that does not seem to be agreed on or coherent. For instance, several markets are introducing capacity elimination mechanisms in a rather uncoordinated way. The decision on new investment in gas is still a national issue, and also the problem of the contractual power between national companies and the gas supplier, which are extra US companies, some rather big extra US company. There is also another problem that now that the network framework guidelines are over and network codes are on their way, regulators have realized that the story is not over, because those network codes need to be evolved, adapted, and monitored. The application needs to be monitored, and the consequences have to be checked, and the network codes have to be adapted accordingly. So there is a recent proposal from the Commission to go beyond the third energy package and to establish an energy union. It has been energy union, but the idea is to deliver a new set of directives that will foster competencies of ACER, of European bodies, and in particular we'll tackle the three areas that I said, the contractual power and the investment area, broadly speaking, the security of supply, broadly speaking, both in electricity and gas, and the third one that I haven't mentioned yet, which is the renewable support schemes, and in general, renewable policies. You might have noticed that the third energy package has been silent on it, in the sense that European bodies, NRAs, ACER, and so even whatever, they can deal with renewables in as much as they are affecting or reflecting into the market operation or market consequences, but energy policy for renewables is more seen as an environmental policy, not an energy one so far. And this means that the competencies, for instance, for establishment of renewable supporting schemes, changing them, and so on, is left outside the remit of the third energy package. Also, this typically determines the problem of coordination between the and evaluation of the impact of the energy policies of the environmental policy into the energy system. And this is also the aim. And overtaking these impasses towards a more integrated system is the aim of the Energy Union. The Energy Union will be tackled in two webinars, in the third webinars of this series. Now, 45 minutes have passed, and I think that I'm done with the presentation. You can find in the slide also my email for further contact, and now I am open